The Newcastle sex abuse ring were a gang of 17 men and a woman who sexually abused adolescent girls and young women from 2010 to 2014 in Newcastle upon Tyne after plying them with alcohol and drugs. The men were of Albanian, Kurdish, Bangladeshi, Turkish, Iranian, Iraqi, Eastern European and Pakistani heritage who were aged between 27 and 44. The woman was a 22-year-old British white woman. A British man of Indian heritage was charged for conspiracy to incite prostitution and supplying drugs to a victim. The victims ranged in age from 13 to 25. Crimes as in the Oxford, Rockdale, Derby, Rotherham, Telford, Bristol and Peterborough prosecutions. The men pretended friendship and offered alcohol and drugs, winning the trust of their victims before initiating abusive sexual relationships. Victims told court that in some cases they were rendered unconscious by drugs and woke to find themselves undressed, having been subject to sexual assaults. The prosecution successfully argued that the victims, whose ages ranged from 13 to 25, were chosen because they were vulnerable and seemed less likely both to complain to the authorities and to be believed if they did so. Operation Shelter, the specific police operation in Newcastle which led to the 4 trials, identified up to 108 potential victims, while the wider Operation Sanctuary, targeting abuse in the entire Northumbria Police District, has identified up to 278 victims. Reactions. The British Labour politician Sarah Champion claimed regarding media news about this and previous trials, that there is a need to acknowledge that in all of the towns where similar cases have occurred, the majority of the perpetrators have been British Pakistani. She said, "We have got now hundreds of Pakistani men who have been convicted of this crime. Why are we not commissioning research to see what is going on and how we need to change what is going on? I genuinely think that it's because more people are afraid to be called a racist than they are afraid to be wrong about calling out child abuse." Investigations. The Newcastle case was one of several cases which prompted investigations looking into the claim that the majority of perpetrators from grooming gangs were British Pakistani. The first was by Quilliam in December 2017, which released a report entitled "Group-Based Child Sexual Exploitation: Dissecting Grooming Gangs," which claimed 84% of offenders were of South Asian heritage. However, this report was fiercely criticized for its unscientific nature and poor methodology by child sexual exploitation experts Ella Cockbain and Wakuways to fail, in their paper, Failing Victims, Fueling Hate, Challenging the Harms of the Muslim Grooming Gangs narrative, which was published in January 2020. A further investigation was carried out by the British government in December 2020, when the Home Office published their findings, showing that the majority of child sexual exploitation gangs were, in fact, composed of white men and not British Pakistani men. Research has found that group-based child sexual exploitation offenders are most commonly white. Some studies suggest an overrepresentation of Black and Asian offenders relative to the demographics of national populations. However, it is not possible to conclude that this is representative of all group-based CSE offending. Home Office. Writing in The Guardian, Cockbain and Tufale wrote of the report that the 2-year study by the Home Office makes very clear that there are no grounds for asserting that Muslim or Pakistani heritage men are disproportionately engaged in such crimes, and, citing our research, it confirmed the unreliability of the Quilliam claim. Operation Sanctuary. A Northumbria police probe into the abuse of one single girl uncovered serial abuse of teenage girls in Tyneside and resulted in the launch of Operation Sanctuary, under which the initial arrests took place in January 2014 and had reached 67 arrests by the end of March that year. In 2017, it was reported that 112 offenders had been handed jail terms totaling nearly 500 years for abusing more than 270 victims. Gang members. The 18 gang members were convicted of nearly 100 offenses. Mohammed Ezram, 35, of Croydon Road, convicted of conspiracy to incite prostitution, sexual assault, supplying drugs to a victim. Jahangir Zaman, 43, of Hadrian Road, convicted of conspiracy to incite prostitution, rape, supplying drugs to a victim. Nashiruddin, 35, of Jones Street, convicted of conspiracy to incite prostitution, supplying drugs to a victim. Saiful Islam, 34, of Strathmore Crescent, convicted of rape, jailed for 10 years. Muhammad Hassan Ali, 33, of Benting Street, convicted of sexual activity with a child, supplying drugs to a victim, jailed for 7 years. Yasser Hussain, 27, of Canning Street, convicted of beating, possession of drugs, jailed for 2 years. Abdul Sabeh, 40, of Dean House, convicted of conspiracy to incite prostitution, trafficking within the UK for sexual exploitation, drugs offences. Habib Rahim, 34, of Kenilworth Road, convicted of causing or inciting prostitution, drugs, sexual assault, trafficking within the UK for sexual exploitation. Badrul Hussain, 37, of Drybeck Court, convicted of drug offences. Mohibur Rahman, 44, of Northcote Street, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to incite prostitution, supplying drugs to a victim. Abdul Hamid Minoui, 33, of Gainsborough Grove, convicted of rape, sexual assault, supply of drugs. Caroline Gallen, 22, of Hairside Court, pleaded guilty to 3 counts of trafficking. Manjor Chowdhury, 33, of Phillip Place, convicted of conspiracy to incite prostitution, supplying drugs to a victim. Prabhat Nelly, 33, of Sydney Grove, convicted of conspiracy to incite prostitution, supplying drugs to a victim. Isa Musavi, 41, of Todd's Nook, convicted of conspiracy to incite prostitution, rape, supplying drugs to a victim. Taharul Alam, 32, of Normanton Terrace, convicted of conspiracy to incite prostitution, supplying drugs to a victim. Attempted sexual assault. Nadim Aslam, 43, of Belgrove West, convicted of supplying drugs to victims. Redwan Sidquay, 32, of West Road, pleaded guilty to supply or offering to supply a Class B drug, jailed for 16 months. References